Welcome to section 2, where we're going to be looking at some of the quality of life changes made in Xcode 10. In this section, we're going to be looking at the editor overscroll. We're going to be looking at how to use the code folding option. We're going to be looking at how less boiler code templates are added to the Xcode 10 files. We're going to be looking at the dark mode option. And finally, we're going to learn how to use the jump to definition feature. Editor overscroll. In this video, we're going to be looking at what the editor overscroll is and why I personally like this new addition to Xcode 10. Let's head over to Xcode to learn what the editor overscroll is. This is Xcode 9 version. We can confirm this by going to the Xcode menu at the top here and then select the About Xcode. You can see that we are using the Xcode 9.4.1 version. So let me close this window. The reason why I'm showing you the Xcode 9 version is for you to better understand what the editor overscroll is. If you look at the bottom of the screen here, if I want to write more code at the bottom here, code, you can see that I will have to be writing the code close to the bottom. So usually what developers do is they will put their cursor on the last line, and then they're going to create a lot of white empty space at the bottom here. Now that allows me to write my code close to the middle of the screen. So now I can write my code just at the center of the screen here, rather than write the code close to the bottom, because it is not very convenient to write your code close to the bottom of the screen. Especially someone like me, when I'm doing my code tutorials, I do not like to write close to the bottom of the screen. So I find a way to create a lot of empty spaces at the bottom so I can be writing the code close to the center of the screen like this. This is why in Xcode 10 we have the editor overscroll, which means there is an empty space at the bottom of the code file by default, so that you don't have to create all this empty space by yourself. So I'm going to delete all these empty spaces. So let's delete them. Now let's go over to Xcode 10. So this is the Xcode 10 version. We can confirm that by going to the Xcode menu at the top and then click on About Xcode. You can see that we are using the Xcode 10.0 version. If you scroll to the bottom, you can see that we have this large white space at the bottom. This is what is called the editor overscroll. So it means that you would never write your code close to the bottom because you cannot delete this white space. This white space is always there. So this is what is known as the editor overscroll. I personally like it because it means I don't have to do the manual creating of wiped empty space, because even when I delete this empty space, I'm always going to have empty space at the bottom, and then it means I can always overscroll my code, so I can always write close to the center of the screen. This feature is enabled by default, but you can change the size of the editor overscroll. If you go to the Xcode menu, click on Preferences. If you go to the Text Editing menu, you can see here we have the editor overscroll. As an option, you can select none. What will happen when I select none? You can see that it now removes all the editor overscroll. So now it behaves like Xcode 9. So let me now change it to small. In fact, let me change it to large first. When I change it to large, you can see now that we have a large editor overscroll, which is the one that I set by default for my own preference. If you don't want it to be this large, you can also choose a small editor overscroll. You can see that it reduces the size. You can also set it to be medium, which is still going to be like this. I personally prefer the large editor overscroll. So there you go. We have this editor overscroll. You can see this is really nice and handy. If you ever find yourself having to do those wiped empty space every time you reach the bottom of your code, you should know now that regardless of if you do that or not, you're going to have this white empty space at the bottom of your code file. I really like this editor overscroll. In this video, we've learned what the editor overscroll is. We learned how to enable or disable this feature, and we also look at how to adjust the size of the overscroll.